Hello.
Hello.
What's up, Bonnie?
Nothing much. It's a Friday morning. No, it's the afternoon. I'm in Alabama right now, so it's
Okay,
the
Alabama.
afternoon.
That's where you're at right now. Is that where you're from
Yep.
originally?
Nope. No.
Okay.
I am from. So I was actually. There's a long story.
Let's
Currently, I
go.
tell
This is a
people
long
I'm.
podcast, sometimes a full hour.
Oh my God, love that.
Yeah, we got time.
Currently, I
Where are you
tell
from?
people. So I was born in California,
Okay, where
and
in
then
California?
the Valley, like the Fresno Valley.
Sure.
And I stayed there until I was like 3, so I don't remember much of it. And
Okay.
then my family, we grew up in the Cincinnati area of Ohio.
Okay.
And then in middle school, like 7th grade is when we moved to North Carolina, but we moved to Greenville. And then a year later, we moved to the Greensboro area, which is how I found School of the Arts.
Got it. That was very succinct. You've told the story before.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I will get to Alabama because obviously because that was not in the story you just told at all, and
Oh,
except
yeah,
for
no.
that's where I am right now. So we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Let's start with I think it's everyone's obvious question, and maybe I say that because I moved around a lot, and this is always the next question that I get, which is why are you moving around so much? Is it military? Is the first guess people always have? What is the reason for full cross country move?
Yeah, just, my dad's job. If my dad wasn't happy in a job or didn't see like room to grow, he had no problem like saying, "Yeah, no, this is not what I want," and moving on. And so my family currently is actually back in Ohio. So that's something else that's kind of interesting. They moved back to the Cincinnati area when I was a sophomore in college at School of the Arts.
How do you feel in retrospect about you said it with a smile for those listening who couldn't see, but how do you feel in retrospect thinking back on your dad's philosophy about work?
Oh, I think that's great. I think it's fabulous because if you're not happy with how you're being treated or you're not happy with the circumstances that you're in, like it was really an early example of, we have the power to change that if we want.
What
And
does he
so
do?
LOL. He started out as a mechanic for HVAC, and he's now like the vice president of a company like for the northern region. So he calls himself the king of the north.
Yeah.
And does commercial HVAC and control systems that I know. That's all I know.
Sure. Yeah. And then at that point, it's past your pay grade. I understand that. I love that. And I want to take a second just to kind of pause on that. And of course, I want to talk about the rest of your family. But I had a stepdad who was also a mechanic. He was an automobile mechanic. But both my mom and my dad kind of were like, but he was like the one who taught me that lesson that you also value, which is like know your own worth. And when that doesn't equal what you're getting from the job, do not hesitate to reassess. And even what I used to say, the expression I used to say, he wasn't afraid to just drop his wrench, walk away. It was like, I'm done. No, in this moment, I quit. Not like, 2 weeks. No, you're going to do what now at this job? This is how it's going to work here now. No, I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore. And he bounced around a lot and it created some instability. But at the same time, I don't know. It seems like you and I both kind of walked away from those situations with a similar lesson of like what I said, like know your worth and assess, is that being recognized, utilized, and compensated?
Yes, that's a lesson. And then for me, being a singer, that moving around, I feel like set me up with a really strong foundation for what I would like my career to look like. So I wouldn't have had it any other way.
Tell me about the rest of your family that's being drug around the country as your dad is being a drama queen at his job.
I do get that from him. He would hate that if I said that, but it's true.
An actual diva.
Yes. No, I have. So my mom and my dad, my mom was mainly a stay-at-home mom. She works part-time now.
Okay.
I have 2 younger sisters, Maggie and Audrey. I love them both. Audrey is where does she work? She works at a day school.
I'm sure that's an important distinction from the way you're being careful.
Well, she's a preschool teacher, but to be like a lead teacher, she has to have a master's degree. So
Okay.
she's just graduated last year, and she's taking a break and like working, and then she will get her master's eventually. But she's absolutely thriving in Chicago. And then my middle sister Maggie, she's in Ohio with my parents, and she works at a daycare. And but she's got a fiance, and they're getting married in April, and so they're doing great. And I'm in Alabama.
Why are you in Alabama, Bonnie?
I am in Alabama. I'm finishing up my master's of music at the University of Alabama.
I have known a number of people who have been educated in different parts of the country who then go to the University of Alabama for graduate school. So many. Costuming.
It's kind of wild.
Yeah. How did that end up happening?
So my voice teacher in Winston School of the Arts, so my voice teacher here is Dr. Taylor. And when Dr. Taylor was in high school, his voice teacher was Glenn Siebert.
Okay.
Who, when I was in high school and college at School of the Arts, was my voice teacher. So he was.
Okay.
I have this previous student who I think you would work really well with. I had a sample lesson. I auditioned. They gave me money, and I'm here.
Let's back up a little bit because I want to dig into that more. Obviously, this is a new place for you. You've not been in Alabama a lot, but you've been in North Carolina, which is like in the region. But let's back up a little bit. So let's talk about everyone in your family kind of seems to have different interests, different things going on. But I didn't hear my blah 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 is also a classical singer or anything like that, or musician. Did I miss that somewhere?
No, no.
So what the hell is wrong with you, Bonnie? I say with all due respect.
That's a great question.
Still working on that? Is that part of the graduate school studies?
Yes. Honestly, I feel like it's just getting worse. It's getting crazier and crazier.
Where did it start? Where does that born for you?
I have always loved to sing. There's like a video clip of me. It's on my Instagram. 5 years old on the steps of the post office singing. Elvis's Return to Sender. Yes, and it's Return to Sender by Elvis Presley.
I appreciate the poetic nature of the content there. Yeah.
I always, production minded, right?
Of course. Tell a story.
So, but I've always loved singing. I've always been into music. And when I was in high school, like my freshman year of high school, I was really into musical theater. And Phantom of the Opera in particular, which, in my opinion, is the gateway drug to opera. So,
I'll agree with you on that because I think you can find it a great litmus test for MT kids as to whether or not they are classically inclined. That is a great place to start, to be like, would you maybe want to sing some shit in Italian in a different kind of way, less dancing? And like show them Phantom and see if they fuck with opera. That's a great way to put it. And that hit you.
Yes, it did. And so my parents were like, well, we think she's good. She likes it. Let's see if there's like something there. So they put me in voice lessons. This was in Greensboro, North Carolina. Okay. And with Dr. Lisa Forrester. And she looked at me and she was like, so what do you want to do? And I was like, well, I want to be Christine Daae on Broadway, duh.
Of course.
And she was like, okay, that's lovely. She's like, do you know that there's more that you can do with your voice? I said, no. And right? And she was like, okay, great. I'll help you do what you want to do, but I'm also going to teach you a classical technique. And as soon as I opened my mouth, there was a couple of things that happened. It was like the first time 16-year-old me like felt actually like really beautiful. And yeah. And also it was like finding the most authentic expression of myself.
I love that.
Immediately. Like just
did you know you're articulating that incredibly well now at the point you are in your life? Were you able to, what did it feel like then? Can you remember what in that moment, was it just mystery of like, whoa, what is this? Or did you already feel some of that definition that you just kind of put out there?
I've obviously thought about this a lot in order
Absolutely. That's kind of why I'm asking, how's the evolution of that?
There was kind of a click, like an immediate click.
Yeah.
Of just like, oh, oh, this is me. I like this. This
Right.
is it. And then it was a continual, like, just exploration and curiosity that came with it. And
Mm.
like, it truly has evolved because starting off like now, okay, so I'm wearing my Dorky Diva sweatshirt. That's my entire brand is the Dorky Diva because I am a huge opera dork. I just love it so much.
What
And that's
makes
where
you
that
a
started.
dorky diva and not like another kind of, where's the dorky come in?
The dorky, and I love this. I just, me as a person, the way I express my love and my passion is pretty bombastic. It's pretty bubbly. It's very like, it's just charged with lots of energy, and this, like I said earlier, this just continual curiosity about what it is, and
Mm.
just this love that just is too big, I can't keep it inside. So the way I express myself, and the hopefully part of the Dorky Diva at this point, the dorky aspect of her is that accessibility, because sometimes classical musicians are a little bit stuffy.
Is
That's
that
putting
right?
it nicely. Oh, that is so right. It's not even funny. And I mean, of course, there is some validity to it, because at the end of the day, like, it's 250-year-old art that we're doing, and we want to do it justice. So I do get some of that. But if we want it to continue, we can't just shut people out because they don't fit what we want them to fit. Like,
Yes, that's true. But it's not just the age, if I were to push back on that at all, because I'm agreeing with you, but I'll give a little bit more of my opinion. And this comes from, obviously went to school where you went to school, but also my wife was a classical singer at SFCM. And so we've talked a
ooh,
lot about opera and about classical musicians. And the big difference that we've really gotten to the bottom of, this is like the thing. This is why when people are like, hey, we're all the musicians and all the drama kids like best friends at School of the Arts, because you guys are both like making like opera musical theater. They're like this close, right? They're like really similar. And that's a fair argument to make. But here's why it doesn't fucking click between those groups. Here's why that culture occurs very differently. There's still a hierarchy. There's still a right and wrong. It's still clicky. All that shit is there. But here's the difference. In your world of classical music, there is a black and white, binary, fundamentally non-debatable right and fucking wrong. That's it. You either hit the note or you didn't. You got the rhythm or you didn't. It's not up to your interpretation. It's not about how you feel. It's not your subjective, objective opinion. You did not do it right. And for 250 years, we have tested how much you can play with it, and you can't almost at all. You have a choice of kind of how loud is a crescendo or a what. Maybe you can get a decibel or two unto yourself, but it's not about that. It's about representing their work through you. Drama work, theater work, musical theater work, especially shit that came out in the last 150 years. It's all about your take, your opinion, your version, your interpretation. What do you think? And then you take it. That's why things like the Oscars, the Grammys, the Emmys, the Golden Globes, all that's kind of a weird ass thing, because there's no right and wrong. Gold medals at the Olympics, that makes fucking sense. You want to give awards to opera singers, I say let's go, because they can lose. But how does an actor fail? Really? Like they kind of can, they kind of can't. It's a way murkier thing. And so I think what that does is that trickles down to the social economy, because there is such a thing as better and worse in a numbers way. If you really have the conversation about performance and the material, you can actually say, I hit the notes more often than you do. My range is more than yours is, period, non-negotiable, until you show me differently. Like, and that, why wouldn't that trickle down to your social circles to be like, I'm up here and you belong the fuck over there because I'm right and you're wrong. I mean, fight me. Whereas the drama argument is like, I'm cool or I'm good or you're bad. Or that's all. Says who?
that is such an interesting perspective that a lot of the people who my colleagues and my friends and everything, I don't know if we would ever think of it like that. To be 100% honest with you, like at the very baseline, you are 100% correct. I will get chewed out if I am flat. I will get chewed out if it happened last night. Our director was like, make sure your notes and the recits are right. And I'm like, sir, it's our first sing through. Can we have some grace? We can. He wasn't that mean. But
sure.
But yeah, so think like at the baseline, you're right. It's either right or wrong. But then my favorite part of it, and I think this is again, going back to something that makes me a little bit of a dork, is thinking about that and then thinking about the more theatrical side of it. Like,
right,
okay,
where you come from.
What can I do? Yeah, what can I do with the expression? And what about vocal colors and timbres and overtones and all of these other things that, like, once you know they exist, like layer on, and it's like then it becomes this full product. And then it's like, well, do we like this performance because every single note and rhythm was correct, or do we like this performance because it had more of that musicality, more of that creative aspect of it? I tend to lean towards the second one.
Yeah, of course you do, you MT kid. You little Phantom Lloyd Webber fan, you. Of course you want to.
I also think it's slightly different in the world of like classical instrumentalists versus classical singers as well. Because if you sometimes I like to think that I get along with most everybody, but
I don't doubt that for a second. We just met. I think that's very true.
Thank you. But sometimes there is there are just divisions in, like, especially in schools, like, oh, the instrumentalists and the vocalists. And sometimes institutions perpetuate that by, putting us in different hallways.
Sure.
But it's so just thinking about that as its baseline, that's a very interesting perspective. I love that, actually.
Well, and there's two different things that play there too, right? Because that's another thing my wife mentioned is like there are some people, instrumentalists that she really got along with. Like she really liked classical guitarists. They're all kind of stony and chill and just hanging out, and that was more her vibe. And so, I mean, it makes sense why she ended up with me. And so it crosses waves if your personality kind of goes out of it. But the big difference, and this is what you bring to classical voice that a lot of classical singers don't bring, which is that knowledge of story through a character, which, my wife grew up singing. Most of her singing was like a religious. It wasn't usually opera. I mean, some opera for sure. And especially when she got to college and got to like late high school, started experimenting with opera. In college, she's learning multiple languages and stuff to do the opera. But early, for the longest time, it's all Christian Korean choirs. And that's what she was doing like every year. Not musical theater, not an actor, doesn't want to be an actor, not interested in that. Even now, she's a therapist. She doesn't sing anymore. But she... I love the story that she told me, and I still bring it up because I just think it's fascinating. And I remember the first time she told me about when she got to school for singing. She'd been singing forever. She's clearly a really good singer. She got into a really good school for singing, all this stuff. And she finally goes to like an acting class where they made her take an acting class. And then they I can't remember the exact circumstance of, maybe it was a voice lesson or something, but basically she's working on a song, right? She's not working on a scene, but she's working on a song. And the instructor is like, so what do you think you're feeling? And she's like, well, I'm nervous because I don't want to like mess this up and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no. In the song, what are you feeling? And she's like, what? Like, what does that even mean? And he's like, well, in the song, she's dealing with these circumstances, right? She's, my lover is gone or whatever the thing is. So what do you think she's feeling? And she just like you poured fucking a pot of boiling water on Alexa, just like no, she had never thought of that in her whole life. It had never occurred to her to emote or act a song. She's like, no, she treated voice work like an instrumentalist. She was like, I use the voice to make the notes. I'm not up here acting. I'm not a fucking actor. I'm a singer. I sing. And to her, it was separate.
That is so interesting.
Isn't that wild to you, person that started in musical theater and then was like, oh, let me do all this goofy shit with my voice while I tell the story. She was like, I do all the goofy shit with my voice. End of story. There is no more story. And they were like, what is your character feeling? And she's like, are you talking to someone behind me? What are you saying?
That is truly wild to me. That is such an, and see, but also that's one of my favorite things about being an artist, period, is you run into all of these people who do the same thing, but they have so many different ways of thinking about it. And that's one of my favorite parts.
And that's the difference between vocalists and instrumentalists, is that it's actually even possible to approach the vocal work to a point as an instrumentalist only. But a lot of vocalists obviously are more like yourself. They are thinking about the character. They are thinking about an acting happening in that song. And that puts you apart from someone who plays the fucking clarinet, because they're not playing a character or anything. They may be telling a storytelling in that, but it's not the same as like, all right, let me feel sad while I hit the note. Like, you don't really have to do that. You can know there's sadness in that minor chord and know that, but you don't have to be like, okay, hold on. Play the fucking clarinet. That would be so weird. People would be like, what are you doing? Just play the song.
Jeez, you're right.
You just step into character and pick up an oboe.
Oh, that's hilarious. Oh my God. I love that. I love thinking about that. I'm imagining my friends doing that, and it's bringing me so much joy.
Like 6, 7, 8. No, wait, hold on. I'm sorry. I'm not ready. Like, you're holding your instrument. So I'm sorry. I thought that's all you needed. Okay, cool. So I think I have an idea of how you kind of found this. And it sounds fairly typical to me. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but that sort of, because there's not that much opera exposure in high school. You'd have to go looking for it or be into choir and have a teacher who was like, so not just this, but let me take you over here to this world. So that kind of sounds like a pretty standard maybe thing in the world of opera, as a bunch of previously like high school musical theater kids who found it maybe along the way. What goes into your decision, other than proximity, being in Greensboro, to go to the high school program for all this stuff?
So Dr. Lisa Forster, she got a job in Ohio. Funny. Like 5 months after I started working with her. So she's like, well, let me get you with this woman who was her voice teacher when she was a doctoral student. And so I studied with Dr. Nancy Walker, and we studied for about 1.5 years before she took a sabbatical to Germany. And she's like, we have to figure out what to do with you. And I was like, I'd heard about the School of the Arts and brought it up the previous year. And again, I had like just started, and they were like, you're not ready. And I was like, okay, I trust you. Great. And so I said to Dr. Nancy Walker, I said, School of the Arts? And she's like, well, why not? Let's try. And so then she helped me with the process of auditioning and everything. And for singers, if there's any younger singers who happen to listen to this.
Yeah, I actually don't even know that process of the high school voice I had a friend, Becca Blank, who was in that program like years ago, and then also did college. She's the only person I know who had the same major that you've had in that way.
Yeah.
What's that like?
So luckily I had Dr. Walker, who was like, okay, what you're going to do is you're going to send an email to all of the teachers, and you're going to get a lesson with each of them, and you're going to see which one works with you the best. This is before you audition. And so I did that. I got a lesson with each of them. They were all lovely.
Back up. How the fuck does that work? Why would they work for free? All of them.
So recruitment, also because a lot of them, especially at School of the Arts, some of them, so now in the world of like college auditions and everything, some teachers will do a sample lesson or a trial lesson for free. Others will charge you.
How long were your lessons with these teachers?
About 45 to an hour. 45 to an hour. How many
teachers?
There was 3 at School of the Arts.
Okay.
Yeah,
but that means that there's a substantial portion of these teachers' time that they're spending on kids that may not even fucking give the school any money.
If the kids reach out.
Right. And that's not like they advertise that that's a thing that's available. You kind of have to know. It's like it's like a secret menu at a restaurant.
That's kind of what classical singing is you have to like know somebody who knows what's going on.
Right.
Which for me, again, my family,
That
we
worked
had
out.
no idea. It did.
Yeah, but you found all these people, these
I did.
PhDs who were like, why not?
Yeah, no, they really, my faith is very important to me. So for me, it's just my whole journey has been a testament to how I'm on the right path and how God has set
Sure.
everything up and like just put the right people in my path at the right time. And so I reached out, got lessons with all of them. And then you fill out the application and you send in your pre-screen videos. So for classical voice, especially if you are a female, sometimes if you're a man, you can get away with not doing this step if they don't ask for it.
Okay.
But you send in video recordings of you singing your songs, and you're auditioning for an audition.
Okay.
It's not the most fun, but it's fine.
Yeah, but that's what actors do too, because that's what a callback is.
Yeah, actually, yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah,
it is,
you
so
just submit
similar.
a tape. You may or may not ever hear back from it. And then if they like the tape, very unlikely, unless it's a small part, that they're just gonna be like, and we'll see you on set on Tuesday. Like there's usually a live video audition or an in-person callback, almost always.
Interesting.
That's normal.
Okay, yeah, so similar.
You're just starting that process younger than a lot of other artists.
Yes. So you do that for high school. Yes. For School of the Arts, they do pre-screens. And then you have your audition day and you go and you're in your nice dress and your hair and makeup's done and everything. And you sing your songs.
How old are you?
They're like, I was 17.
Okay.
So School of the Arts, you can only go for singing if you're a junior or a senior.
Right. It's a 2-year program.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Oh.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Everyone only listening to me is going to be flabbergasted at what just happened. And you know what? I'm not going to explain it to you. Go watch it on YouTube.
So yeah, and then they're like, okay, thank you. We will get back to you one way or another by this date. And, for high school, I don't know if this has changed. The way it happened for me, I was waitlisted at first and I was freaking out because I had been talking to one of the teachers. Well, I mean, you all know who it was. And so I had thought one thing was going to happen, like I was going to get in, and then something else happened. I got the wait list and I'm like, oh my God, what happened? And I know nothing, right? I know nothing about any of this world or anything. Right. And so my voice teacher, we did there was a conference competition thing the very next weekend. And so everything worked out and I got in and I studied with Professor Glenn Siebert for 5 years at school. And then I studied with him off and on. I took 2 gap years before I made my way down to Alabama.
Why stay in Winston for undergrad? You just really like the teachers? I
love Professor Siebert. He, again, set me up really great vocally, technique-wise and everything. I auditioned for, I'm incredibly ambitious and dream way too big sometimes. And so and because I had School of the Arts and I knew that was a sure thing and I felt safe there, I had no problem trying out for Juilliard and Curtis and the New England Conservatory, all these big name, Ivy League of conservatories. And I didn't want to go to a liberal arts school. I was like, I want to go to a conservatory, which,
What is that voice that you're doing about you sound like an angry old witch making that decision?
Oh, that was young Bonnie. That was
okay.
Young.
That's very telling. Is that what she sounded like? You've gone through quite the vocal development because she was struggling.
She was about 50% louder though, because I'm deaf in my left ear.
Now or always?
Yeah. Always. I have a bone-anchored hearing aid now, but we can get there in a minute. That's a whole other thing.
Sure. No, I want to talk about how that affects you being a professional musician.
Yeah, let's do it. But before then, so all of these schools that at the end of the day, thank God I didn't get into because it would not have worked out for me and it would not have been what I wanted. So I think I got rejected from everybody. That's a theme. That's a theme in my life. Everywhere I applied, except for School of the Arts, because that was already, Professor Siebert and I had talked about it and that was a sure thing. And so then I was like, well, and it was really telling when I think about 2 weeks before I heard the final no, I was in my friend's dorm room crying because I didn't want to leave. And I'm like, oh, That's good.
That's
Everything happened.
telling.
Yeah, it really was. And so stayed for School of the Arts for undergrad, graduated 2020, which was COVID, which
Right.
broke my heart because I did not get to do my senior recital, which I had been dreaming about since I was a senior in high school.
Of
And I
course.
also got that last role was that we weren't able to perform it.
Right.
Um, but that was the story for everybody. So we move on. And
Well, it
then I took
wasn't the story for everybody because not everyone had to graduate that year. You did.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah,
That
don't
is
let
true.
anybody take that nightmare away from you. It's all yours.
Thank you so much. Sometimes I do need to be reminded of that. But yeah,
Well,
it's just
I think it's just the case that like what I am taking the time to point out, which I think is important, is that everybody was in a different place for that thing that we all shared. That we all did
that's
the
true.
same thing at the same time, but it all hit us differently. Like even people who were juniors, at least you were fucking done. Like at the
Right?
beginning of
God,
the pandemic had been going
Jesus.
on for like 3 months and you were done.
Mm-hmm.
And at least you could
Mm-hmm.
go out into the world and try to figure out what the fuck was going on. They had to go through the summer being like, what the fuck? And then the fall being like, how do we do this? And then and that's not better or worse than what you went through by any means. It's just, it's different.
Different.
Everybody had a different thing. And I think graduating in 2020 is a very specific, like you had a unique experience. There's nothing wrong with that.
I did.
And it's a shame that those things were like taken away from you essentially by no one or nothing. It just all
Yeah.
of a sudden, but I think that's part of the danger too of conservatory. Like if you go to a liberal arts school, obviously you and I can probably have an 8-hour podcast about the drawbacks of that, because I don't think we're huge fans of that for us. um However, there are some weird little bonuses to going to a school like that, and one of the cool things about a liberal arts program is there's less fetish. I always fuck this word up. Fetish Fetishization. I can't ever say it. They don't fetishize as much about the curriculum and the
Mm.
goals and the assignments and all that kind of stuff. When you go to a place like School of the Arts, depending on how old your particular program in its current iteration is, there's all sorts of crazy expectations set. Like you said, you spent years looking forward to this senior recital, not just because you loved the idea of culminating your education in a recital, but because you knew and watched countless other people do this thing. And you thought, oh, when I do it, dot, 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 dot. Oh, man, when I do it, I'm going to wear this and I'm going to sing this and I'm not going to do that shit. And I'm going to do, like, you do that and do that and do it and do it and do it. And that creates expectation in your head in this huge way.
Yes. It
It's the
did.
same
It
thing
did.
for us. I mean, I started school, and this is just like a little bit before your time, but I started school right before the end of Gerald Friedman's reign of the drama school, which was like 22 years. So there were literally people in their 40s who were coming back to school being like, we took the same classes together. I sat on the fucking elephants in October and talked to a lady who graduated 50 years ago, and we both had the same jazz dance teacher across 50 years, which is crazy. And it's cool because we get to have a little high five and be like, Molly Murray taught both of us how to dance, or not, if you, whatever. It's like that's cool. But it's also creates pressure, because when all of a sudden you get to that point, if something like COVID happens, or you're fucking sick, or your mom dies, or some crazy thing happens, and all of a sudden you can't do that thing that you've built up for 6 years, it is fucking crushing. It
Oh
sucks that
yeah.
you had to deal with that.
It did. It hurt. So I think the next year, like when it came around, when recital season came around, I had to delete my Instagram because I
Yep.
love supporting my friends, but
Yeah,
I
but you don't
couldn't
need
see
that
them do it.
reminder.
Yeah, I couldn't see them. I'm fine now. I'm doing great now, but it did take a minute. And I think that is, yeah, thank you for validating that. And like,
Yeah, of course. And I
yeah,
don't want anyone to try to take that away from you, or even more important, I'd hate for you to take that away from yourself, because I
yeah,
think
that's the one.
right, because it's two things. You don't want to be woe is me, right? That's the impulse in you that's like, let me shut that down so that I'm not walking around being like, I had a hard time, and everyone's like, man, Bonnie really has a fucking problem over there. Like, none of us want to be that. obviously. But you don't want to swing so far in the other direction that you start to discredit your own accomplishments or traumas or wins or losses or however you want to look at it. Um, and I think as artists, we're kind of taught to do that because we don't. First of all, because obviously we spend a lot more time than most people facing rejection and facing uh, repetitive failure, almost as
Yeah.
much as like engineers or scientists who are like, fuck, it still doesn't work. Like they're the only other people that like deal with the level of fuck up that we have to in order to get good at the thing.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, yeah, we all have a kind of a weird tendency to be like one or the other. It's either like my pain, look at me, or or it's like, no, well, everybody has pain. Everybody had to graduate during the pandemic. No big deal. Whatever. It's fine. I'm fine. It's like we do that to keep ourselves safe. It makes
Yeah,
sense. But
that's
you got to
true.
find your way in the middle because that's where the truth is.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I've been learning that this entire year. Like there is this like middle place where like negative things and positive things are happening around you and you don't have to live in either one of them. You can live in the middle of them.
Yeah. I remember, and I've told this story too many times on the podcast, but it might ring for you a little bit. And so I want to give it to you for free. And because the guy who told it to me is dead, so he's not going to give it to you. Uh, Gerald, who was my mentor and ran the drama school, as I mentioned, when we finally sat down for class with him, without the huge long setup I've done in other episodes, he had a stroke in the spring. And we still agreed to take class from him in the fall as he recovered, dealing with aphasia and a number of other things that hindered his communication and thought process. And so his word use went way down. Because he's such a smart guy, each word was like even more weighty and powerful. He didn't ramble on. He said like exactly what the fuck he was trying to say because he had to. He only had access to so many words. Um, One of the first things I asked him on the first day of class was, "You've been doing this for a minute. In all the time that you've been doing this, what do you think is the biggest difference between how you approach things, broadly speaking? Like, is there one big difference that you're like, man, when I was young, now I," and what he said was, and I always kind of reword it because I don't even remember exactly how he put it, but the point was, when I was younger, and again, this is a person with a limited vocabulary, so it's going to seem like, what are you saying? But he was like, when I was younger, I used to see something and be like, oh, that's this. Now I see something and I'm just like, huh, hmm. In all the time that he spent directing theater, which is a pretty examinatory pastime, you spend a lot of time saying like, why the fuck? Like, that's the whole game. And so in all that time, he went from being great at identifying to being less sure. Because as he got more information and wisdom, he realized he knew less. He understood it less because he didn't have all the information usually. He sees the thing walking over there and he's like, oh, that's a red car. It must be on its way to blah, blah, blah. I bet the guy who bought it is like this. And being a smart person, you start to almost treat every moment like you're a detective. Like, oh, I bet that person said that thing to me in that meeting because they feel this way. I bet they're trying to get this thing from me. I bet that person's going through this. And at 80 something years old, he's like, yeah, I don't do any of that anymore. Now I'm like, it could be any of them. And my brain processes that quickly. But then I make no decisions. I make no calls. I place no labels. I just accept that all I saw was a red car go like this, period. End of sentence. Nothing else happened. That's it. We do all these mental gymnastics to try to make the world, like, I think, more palatable or digestible for ourselves and stuff like that. And I'm always pushing myself to try to get to that place earlier than like 87 of being like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm smart. I know I'm fucking smart. Cool. But like, that doesn't mean I have to be like, that's that, and this is wrong, and this is right, and this is left, and this is what. I don't know. Dude, I don't fucking know. Every year we're different in age, but not by that much, really. I'm hoping that every year of my life and every year of your life, we all get a little bit closer to, I don't know.
Yes.
Do you find
Yes.
that in your faith as a helpful thing? You mentioned you're a person of faith. Do you
Yes.
find I don't know a helpful
I
thought
do.
in the world of like, are you Christian?
Yes.
So do you mind if I ask, is there a particular sect of Christianity that you fall into?
Yes. So actually, it's because of School of the Arts too. I'm a Moravian.
Oh, cool. You're like one of the
Yeah.
only, how many Moravians are there? Do you know the answer to that? I've
I
tried to
don't, but
tell
it's a
people
small
about
number.
Moravians and no one knows what I'm talking about.
They don't, but so there are the Moravians. It's Protestant Christianity. Their focus is on community and love. It's like one of the big flag like statements we have is, and what is it? In essentials, unity. In non-essentials, equality, and in all things, love. It's something like that. And
at its first glance, that sounds great.
It's yes, and of course, it's like any group of human beings. You've got your issues, but it is such a lovely place. And I started singing at Home Moravian
Church.
Yes, in Old Salem, the old one that's like 253 years old now. And I remember
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, so that's my church, and I just went to Jamaica with that choir like over the break. I love them, and they really are it is my home. It's my faith home, and even on that trip
were you religious before you started singing there?
Yeah, so I grew up Christian. I grew up more like American Baptist. Okay. And then when I found, and then also like kind of non-denominational for a minute. And then I started singing at Home Moravian. And another big thing that the Moravians do, or that is a big part of their faith, a lot of their theology is in their music. And and it's more of this classical, it's more traditional. Moravians, the best way to explain them is they are traditional progressives. And I love that. I love that so much. So that you've got the more traditional.
Which is so funny that you would call them progressive when like old Salem is loaded with ladies in bonnets, baking bread and ovens and
candles and all that jazz.
It doesn't seem like they're in a hurry to progress towards the future if you look at it through that one little lens. What does that mean to you when you say progressive in that context?
They have always been a proponent for education, especially for women, which is huge. And then just like, coming from so they have women pastors, the way that they treat people and the way that they think about the world. Like I said before, it's like their goal, our goal as the Moravians is to be able for you and I to have differing beliefs, differing systems. Of course, like, in essentials unity. So we all believe the Protestant Christian, like creed, all that.
Right.
But like a big one that is permeating Christianity right now is, homosexuality. Is that a sin? Well, and this answers your question about faith. I don't know. And I think there are so many things that we as human beings are never, ever going to fully understand the way that God or whoever we look to wants us to understand. And I think the minute that we realize that, and we look at people and we're like, this person is trying to live their life the best that they can, the same way that I'm trying to live my life. If you're looking at another person of the same faith, they're trying to live out what they believe God's will is the best that they can, as am I. It's so freeing, and it makes everybody more human, and it makes all of us more on an equal playing field. And so, yeah. I forgot where that was supposed to end up, but that's where it ended up.
No, I have a lot of questions to that. I love that. You kept adding the caveat to your progressive mindset, but starting with the idea that they're pursuing their faith the way that we are, then blah, 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 right? Do you still have that progressive mindset about people who are pursuing other faiths?
Yes, I think I do. And of course, for me, a lot of these questions are things that I don't have a solid answer for yet.
And I
But
don't
like,
expect anything. I'm not grilling you. Again, I told you at the
no,
beginning, this is not like that. I'm
I
just
think it's,
curious.
yeah, I think it's a great question. I was talking to a friend of mine a few weeks ago, and he was like, it's all the same. We're all trying to do the same thing. Like, whether that be Islam or Christianity or even Buddhism, like, we're trying to live our lives the same way.
Yeah.
And so it's like, of course, again, like you said, I can sit here and try and pass judgment, which no, I don't have any of the information to do that. I don't have any of the power, nor do I want that responsibility. So all I can do is look at a person and realize that they're a person, and that I
Right.
don't know what's going on with them, and that all I can do is love them the way that I have been taught how to love. And that for me is God. God has taught me that love and that unconditional love.
It's weird, and it probably doesn't hit your ear as like, I don't know. I don't even want to tell you how it hit your ear. You tell me. But it sounds like even above your faith, or your I'm gonna restart. Even more fundamental than your identity as a Moravian or as a Christian, even more fundamental than that is your identity as a human. And that is how you very much relate to other people. It sounds like, because in the way you just articulated that, what you're saying is, even if I don't get you in these other ways, I first, before that, recognize that you're a person, that we are humans together. And I have to say, in my experience, I would put the label I would put on that, if there is one, is like a humanist. And I've heard that word used a lot by like atheists to kind of say like, look, I'm not religious, but I respect and love the fact that we're all human beings together. Like, that is not missing from me because I don't call it God. I think that is the place that I wish, wistfully, that more people started and ended the conversation. Because the truth of the matter is, especially in the world that we are living in now, with the way that information works and the way that communication works, it's like nothing else is really very helpful. Like, evangelism is not going to be very successful no matter what your religion is. Like, you're only going to be able to move so many other people. We can't even get people to vote. Like, it's not. So just do you and have love outward. And it sounds like that's what you and the people that you like to spend your time with in your faith, that's where you're coming from. Does that feel, did I articulate that accurately?
That does feel accurate. There is, of course, because, I would like, for me, at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit here and shove Jesus down your throat, because again, I don't think God wants that.
Yeah, and you should know it doesn't work by this
And
point.
it
It'd be
doesn't
naive
work.
of you to think that that would work.
Right. And so,
Yeah.
but for me, I think when I share my faith with people, it's kind of the same thing, like going back to me sharing my love of opera. I'm so excited that I know this God, right? And that I know this person loves me unconditionally, and that is supplies a foundation for my life that is so strong that I just want to share that with you. And hopefully you can share in that with me. But if not, that doesn't mean you're that's not a character attack. It shouldn't be a mark against anyone's character.
I don't want to like belittle what you just said, because I agree with it completely, but I'm going to compare it to something with a little less gravitas than God. But that's the same way I feel about sharing art with people. I'm like, yo, have you heard this? And then I play them the song. And I'm like, over here, like, fucking, this is the best song, right? And the beat drops here or whatever. I'm on the edge of my seat, ready to share this with them. And in the back of my head, of course, I'm hoping they're going to be like, when are we going to the concert?
Yes.
They're going to be like, where's the rest of this music? Where's the other? How many seasons are there of this TV show? I can't wait. And I think we all break down as a society if and when they don't respond that way, which is statistically more likely, right? How many times have you shared songs with friends, and how many times have they been like, I love it like you love it? Not that many fucking times. It just doesn't
No.
work that way. It doesn't
No.
work that way. So, but that doesn't mean you stop showing them. It doesn't mean you stop sharing.
No.
Of course not. I'm with you on that. But if you respond any way other than, oh man, is it not for you? Oh, that's cool. If you have any other approach, you're hurting the situation. And if we're talking about something other than like ACDC, like if we're talking about something other than Outcast or Game of Thrones, then you may be making things really fucking bad because that's some low level shit. And if you're saying because you're not on this page with me, now, you know what? Get out of my house if you're not going to watch Game of Thrones. Like you would seem like a crazy person if you said that. You could say it as a joke. But if you really meant that, people would be like, he's a little intense. And you know what? Now I'm never fucking watching Game of Thrones because if that guy's a fucking fan of it, I don't even want to know what the show is about. And that's
Yes,
what happens with religion.
it does. You're right.
You're like, I don't even want to read the book. What? Ugh.
Right, 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 right. Yep, 100% right there on the same page with you.
It's
I
so
also love
frustrating.
how everything, but something else, like, I'm a pretty positive person. I love how it's all the same. How, like, it all just kind of cycles through, like, the way we share our faith, the way we share art. Like, it's all connected in some way. I think that's really cool and special, and I love that.
Well, and the thing that they have in common, right, is that they're both things that, with all respect to faith, all faith, whether it is Buddhist, Islam, Jewish, Christianity, whatever, is human interpretation
Yes.
of whatever that is. So, and I say this with respect, they are all made up by people who are trying their best to articulate what the fuck they think is going on. All of it is that. And so is art. Art is, I've heard two definitions of faith, of God, and of art that I really love, and they're both by the same person, and they're a comedian. Pete Holmes, who is Christian and is a comedian and is one of my favorite artists, he said he defined art is highly sensitive people reporting back to the rest of the group what life is like for them. I'm gonna say it one more time. I've said it once on the podcast, but I'm gonna keep saying this because I love this definition. This is a show about fucking art school. Art is highly sensitive people, like parentheses within a civilization or group, highly sensitive people reporting back to the rest of the group what life is like for them, which is life being a huge thing. I like that a lot. The definition of God that he gave is God is the blanket we put over the invisible object to give it a shape.
Oh,
How great is that?
wow.
And apparently he got that from a quote from the road manager of ACDC, which is a weird place to learn about your faith. But I love that so much because those are both the reason I like those two definitions and I juxtapose them together is because, first of all, it's a Christian artist who said the fucking things. And then also because they both illustrate that in both examples, whether it is faith or art, people are just trying to make sense of everything. It's a lot. The fact that we can even process things the way we can makes us so special as a species. Most animals on this earth can't even think about the problems that we've created. And yet we are running around with all of these superpowers of thought, trying to figure out a way to fucking manage it because it's so fucking much stuff and it doesn't make any sense. None of it makes any sense. So we're like, God, help me. Or I got to put this song on. Let's just watch this TV show to try to get it. To just try to get it.
Yep.
And so that's why I actually really, as a person, I grew up in the church, but I don't consider myself a person of faith anymore. But I have so much respect for people who practice their faith with an artist's mindset, being like, I don't know. and it's a gray area. And I don't know, maybe we should ask fucking
It's so
questions.
gray. It's so gray.
How much do you feel like you deal with that in the work you study in music? You know what I mean? Like,
area, or it's
yeah,
black and white.
because classical music traditionally is pretty rigid. There's not, like we were talking about at the beginning of the episode, it's like, it's not a lot of room for interpretation. I mean, you're like an MT kid, you get all hyped up about how can I make this my own? Well, that's great. But like, how much in your studies in Alabama, we'll catch up to where we are now, how much in your current studies are you spending time challenging, asking questions, being like, why the fuck is this way? Or does it feel like it's a study of here is how to properly blah, blah, blah?
So, very interesting question. I just started my last like actual class, and it's vocal literature. So it's like, you know, a historical survey of.
This is a great area for this question.
Yeah, no, it really is. And it's actually taught by my voice teacher. And what he did and what he's doing is challenging that rigidity. And it's like, well, is it really this way? Or it's like, we have been taught from Mahler on, we have been taught the composer is God, and you do exactly what is on that page. And if it's not on that page, you don't do it. Well, and like, you know, as an artist, you have to decide, well, what is my goal? Do I want to be like, do I want to do this in a historically accurate way, a historical performance practice way? Or do I want to do this in a way that does justice to the composer, but also does justice to where we're at in the world now? And like, that can vary on different performances. Right. And sometimes our idea of what is historically accurate is so wrong, it's not even funny. Because we think that it's just note by note on the page. But you read these treatises and it's hard because, you know, back when all of this started, there was no recording. And so like 1800s, right? Mozart, the amount of times I've been told, do not portamento in Mozart. But then you go back and you read these things, or we have these really early recordings of like this person from this lineage. Yeah, you portamento. If there's a note here and a note there and it's slurred, it's probably more true of like Donizetti and bel canto than Mozart. But that's a portamento, just because it doesn't physically look like the actual sign that we're used to now for portamento. And especially like when it comes to rubato and like pushing and pulling the tempo and the way that you say the words. With singing, it's interesting because you do have words to say. Right. And you have to decide at that point, at that juncture too, well, is the music more important or the words more important, and which aspect serves which? And it depends. It depends on the time period. It depends on the actual work that you're performing. But as a singer, you can't do anything if you don't look at the words. You can't do anything, because then what are you saying? What are you saying to the world? And so that's, it's for me here in Alabama, 26-year-old Bonnie singer, classical music should lose some of its, classical singing should lose some of its rigidity, in my opinion right now.
You have such an interesting dichotomy of progressivism and classical like themes in your life. Is very interesting to me, because you're like, you seem to have a very open mind. You're very full of new ideas, thoughts, and nuance. And yet here you are studying classical voice, a thing that, like you just said, is traditionally, classical music in general is not progressive. It is one of the most conservative things on earth, because it's not even restricted to language. Even if it is restricted to language, it's one of the only mediums where like everyone in the medium like learns all the languages so they can do all this shit. Like it's like it's normal. And yet you're also Christian, but you're not by any means, you know, full of like a rigid social conservatism where you think, you know, you're like pro-segregation or like anti-gay or any like, you know. And then you also, the way you talk about Moravians, even that, it's just such a contradiction, because you're like, they're so progressive, they have so much love for everybody, and I believe that. They also have like a colonial Williamsburg version of their life set up in this town where they like look like Amish people or Quakers or something. Like it's it's all, it almost seems like it's always kind of both with you. It's like, how can we do both? How can we live now and be full of love and challenge ideas and ask good questions and not throw the baby out with the bathwater and just be like, oh well, you know, those things are old, so they probably don't fit now. Which, to be honest with you, you're like right on that cusp of like Gen Z and shit. The people your age, were you born in like 97, 98?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So people your age increasingly are like, throw out the old stuff. It's fucking broken. All those old racist, transphobic, homophobic, sexist pieces of shit. I know they were doing their best, but that's where they were coming from. So most of the stuff they made, we need to toss that out and start over from scratch. And it just seems like your attitude is not that at all. It's like there's so much value in these people that came before us and seemed to, I mean, they knew some shit.
Well, there's that, and then also what they didn't know, we can learn from. We can
Right.
use one of my favorite. This is not that controversial, but I love Wagner's music. I hate Wagner as a man. Wagner as a man is a horrible, horrible person. Like
The
that's
artist
not
and the art are two different things. I'm big on
very
that.
different. And but even it's like, oh, but his like beliefs and everything permeate his art. Okay, well then do it and show us why it's wrong. Same
Sure.
thing with Mozart's Don Giovanni, right? Masterpiece. Masterpiece. Horrible man. Don Giovanni, horrible man. So relevant for the Me Too movement, this whole opera. If it's
Yeah.
done well, if it's done right, it is so powerful and can teach us so much about
Yeah.
life and everything. So like we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to refine it and like
Yeah.
look at it, and we need to look at it for what it is. We cannot throw lights on it and call it and put it on a pedestal. We can't,
Yeah.
do that. But we also don't need to tear it down completely. Just
Almost
look
like
at it
it's
for
somewhere
what
in
it
the
is.
middle.
I think that's something else for singing. The whole time you spend your whole life trying to find this balance between your breath and your chords, and this balance between, oh, my placement up here and this bright forward placement and this warmer dark placement. It's all about balance. And the longer that I've studied singing, it's like my 10th year this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The longer I've studied singing, the more that I have realized that life is very similar. Life is very similar because we're just trying to find the balance. We're trying to find the middle.
Yeah. And I think one of the things we forget is that in finding the middle, this is what I think it's one of the earliest lessons I remember in like high school theater when we didn't know acting, we didn't know what we were doing. We're just like, I don't want to go be sad. I don't know. Be sad. I'm gonna go be sad. One of the early acting things, but this is one of the few like lessons that has stuck around for me throughout everything art related, which is like, you have to find the ends of the spectrum in order to know where you land on it. So like, you know, I mean, you see this all the time in like vocal videos, right? You'll see like a voice teacher working with a kid, and the kid's like, ah, and they're like, ah, and they're like, ah, and they're pushing and they're pushing and they're pushing. And then they finally hit what they think is going to be too far. It's going to be too loud, or it's going to hurt, or it's going to whatever. And that's when their full voice comes out. And the voice teacher's like, yes, that's where you need to live. And you're like, your little young brain is like, I need to live where I thought I was going to die.
Yeah.
Like, and but you have to push against that wall, or you won't even know that you're actually supposed to live on the other side of it. And where you've been hanging out now is actually too far this way. It's not that helpful. You've got to, but here's the problem. People go looking for those boundaries and they run into them, and then they don't bounce back. Sometimes I feel like when they go looking for the extreme, they find the extreme. It's attractive to them for whatever reason. And instead of coming back to the middle, they live over there for like a really long time. And then maybe like 40 years later, they're like, man, I was really on a kick. for a minute there. I'm gonna come chill out. Like I kind of did that during it's a non sequitur, but I kind of did that during the 2016 election. Not during Hillary Trump, but during Bernie Hillary. I was definitely like full on Bernie bro and screaming at all my friends about how she was gonna lose, and then if she lost, we were all fucked, and they just do it. And then she did win. She beat Bernie, and I was like so loud about it. So you fuck all you did this, you burned it. And then it's as I look back on that, every time we've had an election since then, whether it's been a midterm or any of it, I'm like, remember when I was crazy? Like I'm not like that anymore. I wasn't really like that before. I felt like we had this brief moment to do something different. I got really loud about it. And in retrospect, I'm like, I don't think I'll ever rail that hard against any candidate ever again. Like I swung to that far end of the pendulum. I knew what it was like to be on Facebook every day, posting some meme or being a dick about other people's stuff. And then once it was over, and especially if I lost and then I lost again. It was like, I don't want to do this again. Like, I don't want to live here. And I worry that too many people, they have that phase and it lasts for fucking years, rather than like one little election cycle of like 5 or 6 months where you got a little too heated. It's like people live over in that extreme place, whether it's on religion or politics or art. It's like to this day, I kind of cringe anytime I hear someone say like, oh, have you seen, I don't know, I use Game of Thrones because it was big. It's not on the TV anymore. But like, oh, have you seen Game of Thrones? And then someone else is like, no, I never caught it. And they're like, what? Dude, you never like when they go on that next level of I can't believe you haven't seen the art I've seen or whatever, or heard the song, or you don't know this celebrity news, and they're like, I can't believe. That is so crazy to me. You can't? There's so much. Who's got the time to do everything or know everything? Isn't the more likely thing that you'd encounter a new person and be like, have you seen the thing I've seen? And they're like, I haven't. I'm like, let's talk about it or something. Why are you flabbergasted?
I think it's because I think it's because a lot of times we get wrapped up in our own lives and we forget to look outward.
You don't seem to have that problem. You seem like a very outwardly looking person. Do you feel that way?
I try. It's like, it's kind of like an effort. It's like, because sometimes I'm an opera, I'm a soprano. I have no problem like getting caught up in my own story, right? But then at the end of the day, luckily I'm surrounded by people, and I have surrounded myself with people who are incredible people who remind me every now and then in the most gentle, loving way. And sometimes just by being them, like, oh, I'm not the only one who's got stuff going on. Like, I can feel this way. And again, it's finding that middle ground of like balancing that I'm allowed to feel my feelings, but I can also hold empathy and space for other people as well. Like, I can also look out and like see this amazing woman doing this thing and thriving there, and see my youngest sister like absolutely thriving in Chicago. And of course, I'm on a different path, so my life looks different. But it's just having these people in our lives. This goes back to what you were talking about, like living in an extreme. I think the best way to combat that is to have guiding forces in our lives. Because what you were talking about, like even voice technique, if I do tend to do this, I tend to like overdo everything. I'm highly dramatic, and it sometimes seeps into my actual voice. And when we have people we trust who can gently pull us back or just remind us, this might not be the best place for you right now. Like, come with me. I think that's the best part. My favorite thing, like one of the, like my whys to singing is just connecting with people, with different people who without my voice and without what I would do, I would have no business connecting with otherwise. That's the reason why I do it. Sometimes I need to remind myself that that's why I do it. But it's just, yeah, it's people, it's other people, having other people. Are your people,
like your support system, are they other opera singers, or are they totally outside of your work?
So I have a mix. So like I have a personal trainer who also happens to be a soprano, and I love her and she's changed my life. Her name is Cree Carrico. If anybody wants to look at her and the Butterby Fitness Hive, changed my life.
Do it.
It's literally changed my life, and she's incredible.
Cool.
And then one of my best friends, she's a classical pianist, but she's not currently. She works in the president's office at the New School, and she's not an opera singer. She's a pianist.
Right.
I do have my opera people like Dr. Talo and like Jamie, and I have all of my opera people. But then I have my youngest sister who will come and support me, but also is a preschool teacher and deals with children and works at the children's zone in her church, and like has a life completely outside of that art life, right? And my other sister completely outside of the art life. My parents completely outside. Of course, they support me. I have one of my best friends, Tara. We were roommates in School of the Arts, and she was a ballerina, and she's still an incredible dancer, but she's not doing the ballerina route. But I talked to her about, again, kind of just talking about life and everything. Yeah. And then my friends here are mostly singers, but just having a good balanced mix.
Yeah, it seems like that's something that you've got pretty well figured out. And I think that's a really tough thing for people to do. It's just so great to meet people and talk to people who feel balanced and feel like, they have an ambition to improve themselves, and that ambition is clarified by examination, inward reflection and outward reflection. But like, obviously we both know so many artists who are like so focused on the rules or on the game or on the business or whatever it is that they're like, this is how it works and blah, blah, blah. And some of them get farther faster. I'm not even going to pretend like that's not true. There are people out there who I like to tell myself all the time, I'd be farther and faster if I didn't ask so many goddamn questions. I just, there are people who take what they're told and they just go to the next thing. And that can pay off like kind of fast if you just keep doing it and you get lucky too. It's a slower road. The balance. It is. Takes patience. But I truly think it's the way. I mean, if what you want out of life is joy and peace and like comfort to your challenges, because obviously any artist is never going to stop challenging themselves, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a gauntlet. It can be, if that's what you want. But those people, sometimes they burn out pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I mean, I've seen it. And it's like, that's something that I'm constantly afraid of. It's like, this has been such a part of my life for so long. And it's like, I've dedicated 10 years so far to this craft, to this thing that I absolutely love with my whole heart. But it's like, what if it goes away? What if I lose my joy? What if I lose my passion? And so it's finding that balance so that even in the moments where the joy is harder to find, or it's up to me to create the joy, I can do that because they come, man. They come.
Will you do you see a world where you are just as happy of a person, but you're not a professional singer?
That is a great question. No.
Why do you think that's so hard to see?
I think so because it was kind of there for a minute. I did take the 2 gap years. I worked a regular person job. I worked at a car dealership in the internet sales center. And the one thing the biggest thing I learned there was I have to sing. It doesn't have to look like the Met. It doesn't have to look like Vienna State Opera. It can look like Piedmont Opera, and it can look like different things. But I have to sing. It was what I was made for. It just was.
Well, let me clarify, because I used the word professional on purpose. What if singing is a thing you still always do, but it's not your job?
Hmm. Hmm. I think
And imagine the idea too. I'll put this last caveat on what I'm leading you towards. And this is not like, I don't want to sound like one of those parents that's like, I hope you have a backup plan, because that's not fucking what I'm saying at all. But I've found in my 10 years of doing this show and going out of my way to talk to professional artists frequently, and I'm kind of a curious fella. It is both empowering and potentially dangerous for us to assign our identities to our artistry.
yeah.
It's
There's not
tough.
even potential. It's just straight up dangerous to do that, which I know.
Yeah,
Which
but
I
when you assign
know.
it, what I say is it has that bonus is it's not like it's all danger. It also is incredibly like empowering, because if you
Yeah.
decide like I am and this is who I am, well then you start putting a whole lot of yourself into it. But yeah, if you're like if I'm not a professional singer, my job isn't to sing opera for people, I cannot be happy or I do not have value. That's a
Okay, no,
dangerous
that's
place
not
to
what
be
I
in.
believe. Okay, I got the question now. It took me a minute. My value, that was the one that got me. My value is not in who I am as a professional singer. Absolutely not. Because there's just too much life outside of that. There's just
So
too
you can
much.
see a world where you're valuable and unhappy.
No, I think it's what I said. It's like sometimes, we get
I
wrapped up and
understand.
it's like, it's like that. So at the end, I think what I got wrapped up and stuck in is there would be a period, I don't know how long it would be, I would be completely crushed. I would,
Mm,
if I actually decided that I needed to stop pursuing a career as a singer,
right.
somebody I heard, one of my favorite artists has said it takes courage to give up,
Mm.
and I think that's true because it would absolutely crush me. But I think, as with everything, there is another side to that, and I think that knowing who I am and knowing that I do find value in other things, yes. On the other side of the heartbreak,
Right.
I would be 100% fine, and I would find, again, it would come down to, I think, the people around me, and I
Yeah.
would find connections because, again, that's the why. It's connecting with people. So I would just find a different way to connect with people. I
It
don't want to think
is.
about it anymore.
No, it's a great answer. And thank you for, I'm going to be honest. I'm not just patting you on the back. Thank you for bravely answering it, because it'd be an easier thing to kind of shuck off. I appreciate that answer. And I think that even hearing you explain it now, I think what I'm kind of realizing is that, first of all, it's a shitty question, obviously. No, it is. I've always known that. Let me clear that up. I've always known that. What I am now learning in this moment is that it feels like the comparison, like if I were to ask somebody like, could you be just as happy like if your dog died or your cat died? Because you'd be
Mm,
like, but I don't want to live in a world where I've gone out of my way multiple times to create a world where I don't have to live like that. However, I also do accept that in a way there's an inevitability about what you're talking about. And so the answer is, right, for everybody, whether they have a really healthy relationship or, as we have categorized it, a dangerous relationship to their artistry, whatever. The answer for everybody is it depends on how I process the grief of the loss of that dream,
mm-hmm,
because the dreaming it was not the mistake.
mm-hmm,
Let none of us say that. It it isn't that being an artist or being a professional artist or having your identity really tied into being that artist is some sort of terrible thing that you thought or felt and you should stop before it hurts you. I don't want to make it sound like that's what I'm saying. Of course I'm not. You should go after it. But in order to get to the place after you've already been there, in order to get to the place that I am a person with all these different wonderful, beautiful things going on with me, and there are so many wonderful, beautiful things in the world outside of my artistry that I do love and appreciate and would spend my time doing that. I would first have to process the grief of the death of that thing, much like you
Yes.
had to do with your recital.
Yeah.
Could you be
Yeah.
happy not doing your senior recital? I ask you in 2019 and you're like, why are you even asking me that? Go fuck yourself.
Right.
Why would
Yeah.
you? Oh my God. Like, oh my God, get out of my, like, I never even considered that as a feeling. And now I'm having to
Right.
feel it. Fuck you for bringing it up. Like, that's fair because that's so impossible.
Yeah.
And you need to give your best senior recital. And in that way, you might be best served thinking, I'm gonna do it. However, when it was taken from you, were you then a miserable person for the rest of your life because you didn't get to do your senior recital at School of the Arts? Fucking no. That's a ridiculous thing to think. The 2019 Bonnie is right. The 2024 Bonnie is right. Both those things are true. And it all comes down to how well do you process that grief? And it is grief. And to deny that it will be grief is the lie. It will be a death because
Yep.
you care about it and it is going away forever, potentially. The last caveat, of course, I'll give is an opera is a great example. Ballet is not the same way.
No.
You don't have to give up
No.
forever, especially when you learn how to do something really fucking well. If I play the shit out of the guitar and I spend my whole 20s trying to be a professional guitarist, and then I have a fucking kid when I'm 30 and I decide I need to get a job that pays better than this guitar shit to take care of the kid. And then 20 years later, when I'm fucking 50, I'm like, I'm going to go play professional guitar. As long as my fucking hands work, I can go do it. I still can. No one can take that away from me. And you could do the same thing. You could quit trying to be a professional singer in 2 years for a myriad of reasons that don't make you a bad person. And then in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, you could be like, boom, Bonnie's back. Let's do this shit. They're going to call me Bonnie Blackwell. That's free.
Yeah.
You can have that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, no. And that is, again, something to remember. And something else that you said was you could give it up for a reason that does not make you a bad person. I feel like there are so many artists, singers, musicians who need to hear that just because you, and I'm such a hypocrite as I'm sitting here like ready to cry about not having a professional career. But just because it's not a profession does not make you not an artist. Like, whether or not you are paid for it, you are still an artist, you are still a musician. And I think especially young people who don't necessarily know what they're getting into quite yet need to hear that. If, for whatever reason, it becomes too much, that is not a mark against your character, and that is not a mark against who you are as an artist. You are still an artist.
It's an American thing because in America, you're defined by your work. That's who you are. You go to a party, right? You're at a party, you're meeting a bunch of new people. Hey, how you doing? What's your name? My name's Bonnie. Awesome to meet you, Bonnie. What do you do? They're not asking you for your fucking hobbies.
No.
What do you do is how do you make money? That is the question. It's not even and it's kind of a weird way to phrase it because it's like, what do I do? I eat, I sleep, I do all sorts of shit. I play video games. I watch TV. I take care of my wife. I walk my dog. I do a lot, but you don't give a shit about any of that. You want to know who pays me money for what work. That's what the first thing everyone wants to know about each other. So of course, when we're all artists and we spend all of our time learning how to do this shit that we may or may not end up making into our job, of course we feel like a useless piece of shit if it doesn't ever make us any money. Because then there's that other thing. We've talked about this on the show before. You go to that party. Hey, what do you do? My name's Bonnie. I'm a professional singer. Or not even that. I'm a singer. What do you do? I'm a singer. You spent your whole fucking last 10 years sing. Even before that, you were fucking singing. You've been singing since you were fucking 5 years old. You got video proof of it. This is my fucking thing. It's what I do. Oh, cool. Where do you get paid to sing? Fuck you, man. That's my answer to that. Why is that the next qualifying thing? And if they're a piece of shit and you say, I don't currently get paid to sing anywhere, some assholes will be like, oh, well, so then you're not a singer. And you're like, okay, how about we both go to karaoke right now and we'll see who's the fucking singer? Like, what are you talking about? It's so unfair. And no one else gets judged that way. If you're a woodworker and you don't currently have a job in a wood shop, but you can make stuff out of wood, people are like, oh, that's cool. What do you do? I'm a carpenter. Great. Where do you make carpentry? Oh, right now I'm unemployed, but I'll probably get back into a place in the fall. I'm like, that's so cool, man. What do you make? Like chairs? They don't ask like, oh, well, then you're not a real carpenter. They don't do that to them. They do it to the artists, because to them, until you get paid for it, it's not real. And artists must do the work themselves to change that definition about the way they think about it and tell those people to eat shit when they don't understand the way that our stuff works. Because fuck you for putting it in my head that I'm a loser because you don't get it. That's not fair.
It's not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. And it does.
I got
a
little heated there, Bonnie. I apologize. No, I know we just
as you should have. It was the right time to get heated, because it's true. It's not fair, and they do need to be.
It's
told
a drag, and it's okay for it to be a drag, but like that's the thing I think for me, and not everybody else works this way. My wife's not like this. We're very different in that way. I don't know. Maybe it's the Korean culture thing. I don't know. But for me, the more I understand about something, usually, not always, some things I'm like, fucking don't tell me. Ignorance is bliss. I just got surgery in December and I was worried about anesthesia. And a friend of mine sent me a TikTok about all the stuff the anesthesiologist does and how it works. And like 10 seconds in, I'm like, put me to sleep. Wake me up. I don't want to know. Yeah, scary stuff I kind of don't want to know. But for confusing or hurtful things, I think the more I know, the less bad I feel. And I think that that's why so many of us become artists in the first place, because we're trying to understand. We're highly sensitive people. And we're trying to report back to the rest of the group what it's like for us, which is different than how it is for you, which is okay. Yeah. It's not better or worse. We're just highly sensitive. To us, we're like, oh, wait, why?
Yeah.
I need to know why.
Yeah.
It's a constant search for like, fucking why is it like this?
That's one of my favorite things of like being on stage and being specifically an opera singer. The stage is the safest place for me to explore different facets of myself that I would never feel safe enough to do out in society.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's a magical place. Now, the stage is not therapy. No. But
it can. We say it can. It is not therapy, though. It can be therapeutic.
Yes, it can, and it can teach. I think I feel as an artist, I have a responsibility, and it's also such a privilege, and so I have I get to experience such a unique experience where I do get to explore all of these different things, and I get to take certain things from these characters. I'm singing Adina and the Elixir of Love right now, and at the end of the opera, it's the Elixir of Love. There's this elixir, which is just wine, but the quack doctor's like, you need this elixir now because you finally figured out you love this boy. And she's like, no, I don't. The elixir is my face. It's in my eyes. And there are so many parts like that. I want Adina's confidence, her like complete knowing of her value, right? I want to take that from her. I maybe want to leave the fact that she's a total bitch to the boy in the Act 1 finale. We'll leave that on the stage. We won't take that one with us. Right. But like taking these things from these characters that I get to like tell these stories, and they're so representative. It's like, yes, this is a fictional character, but how many women have experienced something like this? And I get to be their voice. It's so incredible. And so that's where like the privilege and responsibility comes in.
It really makes a lot of sense. This has been a very long episode, but I had such a good time talking to you that it just kind of kept going. I want to say thank you, first of all, for doing the show, but also just for your candid nature and vulnerability and talking about some of the stuff that we talked about, because I think it's not always as highly sensitive as we are. It doesn't mean we always want to talk about everything. I think the way I kind of want to wrap this up is just there's obviously we just talked about we have a little bit of an age gap and you were a little bit behind school for me, but you left fairly recently, right?
Mhm.
As you were there, did you get the sense you were there for 5 years, 6 or 5?
5.
5, 1 year of high school, 4 of college. Did you get the sense that the culture on campus while you were there was overworking you and your peers? Did you feel like by your own standards, not by anything else, but by your own standards of what your expectations were, what was healthy for you emotionally, for your art, all that kind of stuff? Did you feel like the culture coming from the school and then living in you and your fellow students was like too much, too little, just right? Kind of a Goldilocks question there.
It is. That's a like looking back, it's an interesting question.
That's why I'm asking you, and I'll just date this for everybody. We're talking almost exactly like 4 years out of school, leaving
Yeah.
during the pandemic. So
Yeah. The simplest answer is yes. There is yes, it was. There was that culture there of overworking, and it was yes. Simple answer, yes. The things I want to put against that is there were benefits to that as well as the obvious like detriments. I am looking back, I'm really thankful for that bar that was so high. Because of course, as an artist, most artists I think can relate to this. The School of the Arts bar was very high. Our own personal bars are even higher.
yeah.
And so, but like having that baseline to then exceed, that was something that currently right now I really value. And I have people at School of the Arts that I can go back to, especially with my artistry, and go back and like work on those things with them. And I'm really thankful for that. I feel like this happens at a lot of institutions. I feel like there's no institution that is perfect.
Of course.
I feel like it taught me a lot. I would not be who I am without that place. It taught me a lot of how to manage that in a way. Of course, in those moments, oh my God, the tears, the staying up too late to get your oral skills homework done, like all of that was so hard. It was so hard. And then having everybody else, it's slightly competitive. It's pretty competitive. It's pretty competitive. Having everybody else, having the pressure of all of that, I did fairly well. I came out of there relatively unscathed. I know that's not the case for some of my peers.
What do you think the biggest difference was between you and people who did not come out unscathed?
I think
other than like barring like specific things with faculty or whatever, if they got into something or had an issue, whatever.
Just like the culture and everything.
Right.
I think for me, it was that church, having that church there, having those people there, having Professor Siebert, who was literally a second dad. He is a second dad. I absolutely adore him and always felt very safe. It comes down to the people that I was around, but not necessarily the people at school, but the people outside of school, still kind of in the community. And then also for me, a big part of the reason why I came out of there as unscathed as I did is because I truly love the art with my whole being. And so at a certain point, it was like, this is worth it to me. Whether that's, if you want to take that and you want to think, oh my God, she's insane. I might be a little bit.
But it doesn't, that judgment that anyone else might have for you is unfounded because it's not up to them.
Right. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Right.
I would go back. I would do it again. Wild.
You know what? I think you just hit something really big, and I'm always looking for new stuff in this area. That's why I kind of wrapped up with this is This is not a pro School of the Arts podcast necessarily. We're not like no one at the school, they know we do it, but like no one like we don't give us any money or tell us what to do or like for years they just ignored that it exists. Um, this show for me at this point is about why people end up there, and I'm using this wording on purpose, how they cope with what happened to them while they were there. And that doesn't mean they had a bad time. What
Mm-mm.
happened to them when they were there, that can mean all sorts of different things. And then what I'm finding is that it does. And I feel like what you just hit on is so big, and it really enforces a bigger conversation that we're having. I might make a separate episode just kind of talking about this, but uh, I've suggested recently that I feel like one of the biggest things that they could do to improve the experience for everyone on that campus is to stop allowing people who are finishing high school in the spring to then come to School of the Arts in the fall with no gap. I don't think that going directly from high school into that program is at large a good idea. I think there are examples of people such as yourself that can work out for. And I think the exemptions to that honestly might be if you went to the high school program because you'd already be there. So it's not the same thing. But what I think you just pointed out and contributed to this conversation that I will take forward is huge. I think you're right, Bonnie. I think you're right. I think the biggest reason why you feel overall positively and like it was worth it, despite how incredibly difficult it was, and maybe even times too much, is you are balancing those two things, which is what happened to you while you were there, and is it worth it? Because how much do you like this thing? How much do you want to even know about this and care about this and learn about this and be a part of this? How much do you want this to be in your life anymore? My wife almost quit conservatory because like halfway through, she was like, "Oh, I don't want to be around these people." Like, and not in they're terrible people. They're just not my people. Like, I just don't. And one of my teachers was like, "Well, don't you want to be a diva?" And I was like, "No." Like, I don't want to be called that. I don't want to be in that group. I don't want that much attention on me. I'm not a spotlight performer. I just like singing, and I've been singing, and I got into a good singing school because that's what I was doing. Like, I don't know. And there are people like that who are just on that momentum shit. And I don't think she necessarily shouldn't have gone there or whatever. But I think if she'd spent a year in between high school and that program, she might have changed her mind about going. And it's fine that she got a degree, whatever, but like she didn't need that training. She doesn't want to use it. She's not interested in that. Didn't need to spend that money. Could have just been like, I don't actually like this. I've just been dancing since I was 5. I've been acting since I was 6. I've been playing the tuba since 6th grade when they were like, you need to play an instrument. And now I'm just ba ba da ba da ba da ba da. And then you get into a program that's like, are you willing to crush yourself almost to death to be good at it? And some of these kids who are fucking 17 years old are like, no, I don't even really fucking like the tuba.
That's no, it's so huge what you've just said. I've thought of it in a different way. Everybody walking into that school needs somebody who's been through that program, their program, who is not afraid to sit there, look them in the eye, and tell them, this is what you are about to get into. This is what it will look like if you don't love this thing so much. It's not worth it. It's not. And that really, it's really not.
If you just like it, not love it, but if you just like it, guaranteed if you come here, you'll fucking hate it.
You'll hate it. You'll hate it.
You'll be like, I hate this thing. I don't want to be around it. We will ruin it for you if you're not obsessed with it.
No, that's true. It really is. Yeah. And again, that's well put. Again, that's why I made it. That's why I was okay.
Right. Me too.
But at the end of the day, I had
already resigned to the fact that one way or another, a version of this is going to be my life. So I want to know everything they have to teach me about it, because I'm not going to graduate and go make kayaks on the river and do it, like, maybe later, but for the foreseeable future. And I'm truly deeply dedicated to it. Not because I promised myself, not because I've been saying I was going to do it, not because my parents told me I should do it, not because I started doing it when I was 5, because I fucking like it.
Yes.
I
Yep.
really like it.
Yes. Yes. I 100%, 1,000% agree with you. And I'm in the same thing. But I also think what you just said, like, I'm going to do this for the foreseeable future, especially as an artist. There is some aspects we don't necessarily have control over.
Correct.
But if we believe that, and like, just like, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I know that I will sing.
Right.
It takes away some of that. That's kind of what fuels the thick skin to handle all the no's you get.
Yeah.
I've gotten so many more no's than I've gotten yeses, but also I get yeses every now and then, and it's fine. And you keep moving forward. And
Yeah.
School of the Arts it was good for that too. It was good it does comes down for that. If this is the career you want, if this is what you want because you love it so much, worth it. If not, please God, don't come.
And defining the it is important. That's the other thing that I think we're missing here as well, because it's like, for me right now, I have a job, technically not even really supposed to talk about what I do, but basically the point is, what I like about my job right now is I'm a director, which is a thing that I have a degree in, but I have a degree in directing theater, not film or television. No experience in film and television in my education at all. I direct a TV show. I also write for that TV show. And when I went to drama school for theater, where everyone was like, I want to go to Broadway. When I went from the beginning, I was like, I want to direct TV shows. That's what I want to do. But I don't think film and television school is where I'm going to learn the shit I want to know when it comes to making good TV shows. I want to understand the drama. I want to understand the choices. I want to understand the actors. I want to be able to speak to actors. I also really like acting myself. So I want to take the acting classes. Like, I want to focus on this part of that storytelling, even though in my head I was like, I don't know if that's going to be The Office or the Game of Thrones or the this. I don't know what that means. I just want to do that. And I also recognize that most people writing TV shows aren't like 24 years old. So I'm not going to get the job anytime fucking soon either. I'm on a long road to getting the thing that I want to get.
Yes.
So it's all about learning and getting more skills. And now I direct a comedy show that is like a reaction to a reality TV show. And essentially I work in the reality TV business, which I never would have ever guessed, or you would have told me. I would have been like, no fucking way, because my brain wasn't able to conceive of it. And yet I'm writing comedy, and I'm directing. I'm doing all the shit that I said I wanted to do. I just didn't know what that was going to be. And if you had told me when you sat me down, like you just said, and the senior was like, I didn't really have that same experience because I was like in DMP, a weird path. But like, if I was a freshman and you sat me down as a freshman auditioning at my audition right before I go in, and a senior was like, look, buddy, if you don't love directing theater and musicals, you should fucking get out of here. And I'm like, well, I like TV. If that senior didn't have the thought to be like, that's fine.
Right. That's true.
Like, oh, well, maybe you should go to film school, buddy. Like, I don't want him talking me out of that, because I had that choice right. I was right about it then, and I still feel like it was the right choice. So I wouldn't have wanted anybody to talk me out of what I was up to. But that senior, who I think obviously a 22-year-old senior may not even be the right person for this, because they're still figuring out what the fuck is going on. But somebody who maybe graduated from the program like 10 years ago can be like, what is the it? Why are you here? Be like, oh, I love acting. Okay. Why? Because of the attention, because of the study of the characters, because you like fucking plays, because you just like being in the theater. And honestly, if you were the stage manager, you might be happy too. Like, why? You need to be getting to the root of that question, or you will fall apart when your expectation doesn't go exactly according to the plan. If you have a hold of the why, you might be able to be like, oh shit, I actually don't mind for a couple of years, singing in this choir for free and having this job, knowing that that choir is working on the music I care about or whatever. I am making progress in it. And then in 2 years, after I work at the bike shop and sing in the choir for free, then I'm back out there hitting auditions and I picked up all the knowledge from the choir.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, yeah. So this is a great podcast because artists need help. We need to help each other. We need to support each other. We need to be honest with each other about our experiences.
Yeah, it's about passing things on. And that's the whole idea of this. It's weird because I tell everybody this is not an investigative show because it isn't about you, but it is investigative about artists. Like, why the fuck are we like this? And why do we have to do this? And I don't know that you ever get the answers in a clean way, but I'm even in talking to strangers from which we have age gap, art gap. We're not going to do the same kind of thing at all. We got to the bottom of so many really interesting things today. I really appreciate it. We still got to talk about the hearing. I want to talk about that. I have a list of things for your second episode already. So we're going to have to just have you come back at some point, if that's okay.
That would be lovely. This was absolutely lovely. It was just, and as artists, I think connecting with different artists and especially different artists, it's empowering. And it's like, yeah, we've got this together and we're doing it and there's a reason. And so this was absolutely lovely. I had a fabulous time. Thank you so much for this experience.
And look, see, folks, the way she put that together, we're going to have to get Bonnie to do all of our promos. It's very welcoming. We're going to have when we have the live show, I'll let you MC it and just welcome everybody with that energy. Cause I'm telling you, that's a vibe. Thank you very much, Bonnie.
Thank you.